how's it going, guys? It's Tuesday. It's 7 o'clock. I've been up for like 16 hours straight or something like that. So I figured why not go ahead and do a live stream. I'm going to be recapping what I read last week, what I picked up from Half Price Books as usual. And I got a chance to watch some of Not Near Mint, Rob Worth's show last week and the week before that. And they've been counting down like their favorite modern books in their collection and their copper favorites in their collection. I'm assuming this upcoming week they're probably going to do bronze, so we'll see. But I decided I really like that gimmick, so I figured why not dig through my own collection and see what I think is going to be my top 10. But I got to be completely honest, I was going to take all this time and really think about it, and then I got home today, and there was a giant box sitting on my porch containing a PS5. So that's pretty much what I've been doing since getting home from work. So yeah, I assembled a list, and I probably won't agree with it tomorrow. So we'll see what you guys think here in a little bit. But let me get into this chat. I have no idea what's going on in this chat. It's already gotten real weird. We got Chris Barrett. What's going on, man? He says, the Cosmic King has arrived after working a 10-hour day. I know the feeling every day, man. John's Comics with Kids, what's going on? He says the real king is here. This is like, what was a Harley Race and Jerry Lawler, I think, had a king feud once. I can't remember. Maybe it was Macho Man. But anyway, kings are feuding in the chat. But John also had a pretty awesome show with White Whale Comics last week where they talked about some of their favorite trades in their collection. I'd like to do something like that on here as well pretty soon. I'm going to skip the rest of the king talk here. Hey, Comic Man Andy is in the chat. Hopefully you guys checked out Modern Men last night with JB returning, Comic Man Andy, and Drew Manchu, of course. We got a chance to read X-Men Messiah Complex, so we had a lot of fun over on the Comic Core last night. And then we got Scott Evans. He's in the chat waving. StreamYard hasn't loaded him up yet. There he is right there. What is going on, Scott Evans? And Chris Barrett calls dibs on the Macho King, Randy Savage. Oh, yeah. And I just happen to have that laying around there for whatever reason. And we got Animali Comics. What's going on, man? Animali Comics is in the chat tonight. And because I've been reading so much for other shows like Modern Men, Comics of the Atom, I was even on JP's budget collecting a couple weeks back. I decided to take it pretty easy the last few weeks in terms of my regular pulls and reads and stuff like that. Plus, I finally did the unthinkable. I just went into my local shop and told them, no more Batman books. I'm tired of Batman. That's all DC wants to sell me is Batman. So I cut out the animated stuff, Death Metal, whatever. Death Metal. I'm done with Death Metal. And then, of course, the James Tynion regular Batman title. I was kind of done with that after 100 anyway, even though it seems to be the most solid of all of them. I decided I'm just going to cut it there. And if I hear good reviews about it, I think I'm going to read it digitally 6 months down the line on the DC app. But I did read a couple individual issues last week. And this one was based off Comic Man Andy's recommendation. They did have a copy of this in my shop, so I decided to pick it up. Star Wars Darth Vader from the Greg Pak run, issue number 7. I have no clue what is going on in this run. So I think a lot of what's going on was lost on me. But basically, it seems like it was the introduction of a new villain who can actually fight Vader and go toe-to-toe with him, which is an impressive feat in itself because it's Darth Vader. Come on. But, hey, not to mention the really kick-ass cover on this one, plus the fact that, like, there's some cool, like, flashback scenes as Vader, as he's just been dismantled, like he's missing his legs, he's missing an arm, and you get to see him, like, rebuild himself and get ready for a second round with this new villain. So it's pretty cool. I definitely want to wait and hit Marvel Unlimited 3 months down the line, hopefully, and get a chance to read that whole run. But I still need to read all the Gillen stuff and all the Charles Soule stuff, and I feel like somebody else had a run in between all of those guys. And, of course, the other thing I read, TMNT issue 111. This is still my favorite book going today, so even if I drop like every title, this will be the very last one to go. It's still pretty solid in my opinion. But in this one, old Hob, he is still up to his old tricks, and he sends these two goons right here to go to the Splinter Dojo and see what's going on with the Turtles and the Splinter Clan, basically. But the thing is, the Turtles, they're awesome ninjas. They already know these guys are on the way, so they set a trap for them, all that good stuff. Meanwhile, you got Mona Lisa, and I can't even think of the other female character's name right this second. Sally, her name is Sally. So Sally and Mona Lisa, they're each having their own storylines where they're just heartbroken, basically. You get to see Mona Lisa, and she finally calls her parents. She hasn't talked to her parents since the mutant bomb went off, so her parents don't even know she's a mutant. So she wants to do the FaceTime gimmick with them. And as soon as she turns on FaceTime, her parents just become disgusted and hang up the phone. It's a pretty sad scene, especially if you're a Mona Lisa fan. And then, of course, Sally sat herself for whatever reason. I think that was in 110. I can't remember what happened at this point. I've read so much since then. They kind of at least get a chance to embrace each other, make each other feel better about their predicaments that they're in. But the real catch is at the end. And if you guys are reading this or reading Turtles in general and haven't come to this point, I'm going to hold up the book for spoilers. So when I put it down, spoilers will be over. So big spoilers. At the last panel of this book, Karai turns out has her own Toka and Razor. So Toka and Razor will be introduced into this continuity. So that's very exciting. Love me some Toka and Razor. So we're going to end the spoilers there. But yeah, TMNT, still 2 thumbs up for me. There you go. There's one rhyme for a certain somebody. All right. So we'll go into the half price book stuff, and then we're going to talk about some top modern age comics. So I'm still finding these somehow. I went years, like a decade, without finding these B covers for the Green Lantern stuff, and I'm finally finding them. Before I keep going, I do want to say hi to some people in the chat. We got some more people hopping in here. We got the Immortal Biggie Shack. What's going on, man? You know, I still have this figure next to me for some reason, but there you go. The Immortal Biggie Shack is in the chat, and I still have the Hogan action figure laying down right there. Then we got Comic Mag Musings. What's going on, Comic Mag Musings? How you doing, man? And then we got Arsenio the Art Chemist. What's going on, Arsenio? He's in the chat as well. And, of course, Chris Barrett's still hanging out. Back to the Half Price Books finds. These Green Lantern, like, mid-2000s B covers, I think they were technically, like, 1 in 10s, something like that. But basically, the late 2000s, they didn't print a lot of anything, it seems like, especially on the DC side. So it was like a key issue or something like that, or like a huge tie-in. This one does tie into the Blackest Night, but it was the Prelude stuff, so it wasn't a direct tie-in. So they weren't selling as many Green Lantern core books as, say, you know, the regular Green Lantern or anything like that, or Blackest Night, of course. So to find these B covers, like, within weeks of each other, because if you guys watched my previous stream, I found a whole bunch of them for like a couple bucks, and then now I found another one I was missing for $1. So hopefully I'll keep finding those because they're not easy to find. For 20 cents, I picked up another copy of Next Wave #1. I still need to read this book. I've heard from several people that this is really good, but I haven't heard too many people talking about it, so I definitely want to give that a read for myself. And another one I picked up for 20 cents, Rage of the Red Lanterns, Final Crisis. The reason I picked this one up is, you know, I got to have all the Green Lantern covers from around this point. I have the other Shane Davis cover on this one. That's the one I bought back in the day, got a signature on, all that fun stuff. But I never got this A cover for whatever reason. So 20 cents, why not go ahead and add that to the collection? Check out this sweet Hell in the Cell ad on the back with Kane and Undertaker statues. So you got to love, even if it's ads from the mid-2000s, you got to love the older ads. And then pretty much everything else I paid $1 for. So I got the New Avengers issue number 39. Just a sweet David Mack cover, and he does the interiors on this as well. I think I got this collected in a Marvel Premiere hardcover right over there. But I always wanted this cover, so I figured for $1, why not go ahead and throw that in the pile. I see this one has cooled off quite a bit. 52 Weeks, issue number 11. I have a signed copy. Sometimes I have a signed copy of something. I don't mind re-adding an unsigned copy back into the collection just in case I feel like getting something graded one day. I don't do a lot of grading, but you never know. But yeah, I didn't want to leave this laying for $1, so I just threw it in the pile. There it is. First full Batwoman, I guess, but don't sleep on 52. If you guys like DC Comics in the mid-2000s, you got to read 52. Such a good run. And then I don't know anything about these, but they looked cool, so I picked them up for $1. A couple Young Guns sketchbooks. This one's from 2004. So they had such young guns as Greg Land and John Romita Jr., apparently, even though I don't think there was anything young about Romita Jr. even in 2004. And then I'm not sure about which year this one's from. But as you can see, the talent roster was pretty deep whenever this came out. If their young guns were Lanil Yu, Billy Tan, Pascal Ferry, Ariel Olivetti, and Clayton Crane. And, of course, Simone Bianchi's on there, too. So really stacked roster of artists there. Here's one from 1993, Marvel Age 122. I just thought that was a really awesome Joe Quesada cover on that one, celebrating the 30th X-Men anniversary. Slowly getting all these Perez Titans, so I had to get another New Teen Titans Annual number 4. Another Perez cover on that one, of course. Here's a milestone number I don't see too often. Everyone's all about Static Shock and all those other ones, but you don't really see Blood Syndicate too much. This one just was like in the bin several weeks in a row, so I was like, I'll go ahead and just pick it up. It's a sign that no one has taken it yet, I guess. So I just went and threw that in a pile for $1. These milestones are pretty fun, actually, if you ever get a chance to take a look at them. Here is the B cover for Batman 22 from the Button. So usually you have like your A cover and then the lenticular variant. This was just the plain old Jason Fabok B cover on that one. So once again, for $1, figure I couldn't go wrong. And then the last one before we get into tonight's list, we got the Mighty Thor Annual number 11, just a cool Bob Layton cover on that one as well. And I wasn't going to leave like bronze and copper Marvel in the dollar bin. Are you kidding me? Someone else would have swooped this up if I left it there for sure. So I had to get that one, of course. All right, let's hop into the chat one more time. And then I'm going to attempt to explain my reasoning for this top list here. We've got Chris Barrett saying, I think Green Lanterns had a cover of 1 in 10 and a 1 in 25. Yeah, they might have upped it once the sales went up to 1 in 25. I feel like when they started doing the cover splits around, I think, issue 30-something, like when they did the Red Lanterns pretty much. I think that's when, or no, it was issue 25. They had like that big cover where you get your first Larfleeze and your first Atrocitus. They had a B cover for that one. So I think after that, that's where they started like all the variant covers on Green Lantern, basically. They tinkered with it around issue 10 when they went 1 year later, but that one's okay too. And then Barrett says, believe it or not, I actually own that Taker bus. That's pretty awesome, man. All right. So like I said, big shout out to Rob Worst. His link to his channel is down below. And actually, it's the episode that inspired me to make a list and see what came of it. I actually ended up taking books off the wall, putting them in full back Mylars for this. So if nothing else, I got a chance to rebag some of my wall books, basically, because they are in desperate need of a rebagging. So, like on their show, I decided to come up with a couple honorable mentions because by the time I got done pulling stuff off walls and out of bins, I was just like, I have 14 books. That's not 10. So I weeded these 4 out of the top 10, I guess. I'll also preface this. These are worth stuff to me. These aren't necessarily like hundreds of big boy dollar books or anything like that. So some of these may be in the dollar bin, but to me, they're very influential. And maybe with the time they came out, they were very awesome. That all being said, the first honorable mention is Gen 13, a book that can be found in many a dollar bin. But back in the day, this thing, you could not find it. Wizard Magazine had a ton to do with that. They hyped this thing up like no other. Like if you flip through like a 94, 95 Wizard Magazine, odds are if you look at their hot 10 list, one of these Gen 13s is going to be on it. And the reason I want to show off this one, newsstand. Had to get that newsstand copy. Found it for $2 about a year ago. So I always loved Gen 13. I've always just had a soft spot for 90s J. Scott Campbell goodness. And hey, he had Jim Lee on the title back in the day. So I just remember trying to chase this down as a kid and not being able to find it. And now I just think it's hilarious getting it in dollar bins and in sets and stuff. So I just threw that as an honorable mention because to me, it's still a really fun book. And then speaking of like early Image, I had to put like one of the original Image titles on here. I wasn't going to do Youngblood. I still don't like that book at all. And I've never been a big Spawn guy, but one book I did really enjoy as a kid and got the gold version of eventually. That's Wildcats #1. So I had to put Wildcats on the honorable mentions. I kind of really did want to put this on the top 10, this crazy gold variant. I mean, look at that. Like blinding glare. Combine it with a Mylar, it looks pretty awesome. But I was so happy to find this book a couple years back at my local shop. But yeah, just the 90s is oozing off of this one. You got embossed cover, gold cover, issue 1, Jim Lee. What is not the love here? So that automatically had to be on the list somehow. So it went as an honorable mention. And then I also put as an honorable mention, and this one, I had it at my number 10 for a while, but right now it's an ice cold book. Let's just put it that way. But at one time, the little kid me really wanted this book, and it took me probably, 20-ish years to find it. Actually, probably 25 years. I think it took me 25 years to find this book because I'm such a cheapskate. I wasn't going to pay more than a few bucks for it, but luckily I finally got it for a few bucks. And that is Flash 92, the first appearance of Impulse. So for a long time, I could not find this book. As a kid, I had issues 93 through 100, the Terminal Velocity, Mark Waid, Mike Wieringo run. And this is pretty much like the book that kind of kicked that part off going into Zero Hour and everything. And I was a big fan of Impulse and all the Young Justice characters around that time, like any other, kid growing up in the 90s. But this book just kept eluding me. They always wanted like $20, $30, $40 for it. And eventually I did end up paying probably like 10 or 20 bucks for this copy, but at least it's, nice and minty clean. But then I bought this and then found a $2 copy like right after that. So I always wanted this, and I thought it'd be fun to tell a story about how it took me 25 years to get one of these books. So patience pays off, I guess. And then the last honorable mention, which, like I said, I don't know why this just didn't make the list. Edge of Spider-Verse, #2. So first appearance of Spider-Gwen. Got this one double signed by Robbie Rodriguez, Jason Latour. And Jason Latour is nice enough to put a little personalized head sketch on there. But yeah, got this for cover price way back when. Just happened to blow up. And I really enjoy the Spider-Verse stuff, but the reason I didn't put this on the top 10 is just I enjoy Spider-Gwen, but I think I enjoy the stories and the characters in my top 10 a lot more than the Spider-Gwen storyline. Not that it's not a great storyline, but it just didn't crack my top 10. But still very happy to have the book in the collection. And I took it off the wall, so I had to show it, basically. So let's see if there's any action in the chat. Anna Malley says he loves Gen 13. Nice, man. I'm glad there's another Gen 13 fan out there somewhere. All right. So let's see if these 10 comics can live up to any of those. So number 10, like I said, this is a $1 book. But I think the pattern this particular book started, I mean, this book was a trendsetter in my opinion. That is Daredevil #1 from 1998. Kevin Smith, Joe Quesada, Jimmy Palmiotti. This thing pretty much proved that like a guy can come from Hollywood, be a big time director, and kind of take dip his foot in the waters of comic books and be successful and, make a career of that too. And be very influential in doing so. Like Quesada, or I don't know if it's Quesada or Palmiotti. They just happen to have Kevin Smith's phone number. It's probably Quesada. But yeah, they got Kevin Smith on board somehow, and that kind of dragged him into comics for a pretty good chunk of time because he also did Green Arrow, of course, and then the Spider-Man Black Cat thing that took an eternity to come out. At least this had a good schedule, had some phenomenal Joe Quesada art. And the other reason I wanted to put this on this list, like Daredevil, minus one or two hiccups, he has had a really solid run of comics since this issue. If you think about it, like you had Kevin Smith writing, of course, then David Mack was on the title for a little bit as writer and artist. And then, of course, Brian Bendis had his big run with Alex Maleev. And then after that, usually they take a breather, but no, we get Ed Brubaker on the title for a while. And then they have that hiccup with whatever that was called, where he becomes a member of the Hand, and yeah, why, I don't know. But then Mark Waid comes and saves the title after that with Chris Samney, and he has his big breakout over there. And then Charles Soule, Chip Zdarsky, that book is still going strong today. And it really kind of starts in 1998 when a Hollywood director came and decided he wanted to write comic books because he was a comic fan growing up. So I think this is well worth anyone's time to read for sure. We got Brutus Scar in the chat. He says Daredevil is a great run, and he's asking, did he ever finish that Black Cat? I believe like 2 years. I think it took 2 years between issues 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, and it was still like every 2 or 3 months between issues after that. But they finally did finish it as a 6-issue miniseries, but literally took years to come out, kind of like the Ultimate Wolverine versus Hulk that Damien Lindelof was writing. And that thing had a huge delay to the point where it just, no one cared about it anymore. It had a lot of heat when it first debuted, but then it just cooled off because of that long delay. So Lindelof did the exact same thing when he came in the comics. Next one, and I decided, I tried to limit it to like one Batman comic, one Superman comic, so on and so forth. So hopefully I've managed to do that. We'll see. But I had to put this one on the list. It was kind of hard to pick a Batman book because most of my favorite Batman stuff is like that late Copper run where you get Dark Knight Returns, Year One, Killing Joke, so on and so forth. But I decided to go Detective Comics 880 because this is this Black Mirror run is really the run that put Scott Snyder on the map. It got him ready for the New 52 and that big, huge breakout run with Greg Capullo. And of course, 880 has like the most infamous DC cover released in like the last however many years by Jock. He definitely put Jock on the map for sure. But yeah, this is also the cover. I think it's, like it or hate it, I think it really changed the trend in comic books where it became more about the cover nowadays than what's on the inside in a lot of cases. And I think this was definitely like one of the main reasons for that. They kind of saw the buzz and the excitement over this cover, and this isn't even a variant cover, it's the A cover. So they're like, oh, what if we make these really cool B covers and then mass print them and make a cool C cover? And so it just, the escalation keeps going. And I think maybe a lot of it stems from here. They really saw the ability of a cover to sell a book. And yeah, not to mention the fact that Black Mirror is a good story too. See, we have a few more people hopping in here. We got Double S. What's going on, man? He says, Year One, great run for me. I don't know why he's laughing, but so it's a good run. Brutus Scar says that is a great Gordon cover. Yeah, absolutely. Is it James Jr. or is it Joker? Who knows? It's supposed to be James Jr., but then Jock said it was a Joker cover. And yeah, that's a whole debate that's still going on to this day. Chris Barrett says 880 is the only thing I know that Jock did. You should check out Witches, probably, Chris Barrett. Check out Witches. Art Chemist is asking, did you get to read Superman 27? I think I'm going to try to read the Superman run when it comes onto the DC app, because I definitely want to read this House of L stuff going on, because they brought back my boy Connor Kent, and I want to see what they're doing with him. But the way COVID and the DC releases have been, if it wasn't on my pull list, I'm probably not getting it from my local shop. So I'm kind of just like, I'm just going to wait for digital. Wait till it's free. So that's kind of what I'm doing. All right. So like I said, I'm trying to limit it to one franchise, and I'm not counting this as an X-Men book. So I'm just counting it its own thing, I guess. But we got NYX number 3, because why not? Quesada and an early Josh Middleton on this title. First appearance of X-23, one of my favorite characters that's came along post-2000. And the main reason I want to show this one off is this is probably like, besides Sandman number 1, finding that for $1, this is probably my greatest find I've ever had, just 50 cent dollar bin diving. Found this at my local shop back in probably 06, something like that. Whenever the book came out, I can't remember right this second, but like probably a year after this book came out, found it for 50 cents. So this is my 50-cent copy I got of NYX number 3. And then in 2010, I got it signed by Joe Quesada. So this is one of the ones I definitely had to take off the wall and give it that full back treatment there. So NYX number 3, that's an easy one to get on the list for me because they did such a great job with this character. Take a sip of water for that. Oh, yeah. All right, let's see what's next. All right, so like I said, not counting that as X-Men because I want to put this X-Men book on the list. And we're going back to Hollywood for this one because it's Astonishing X-Men number 1. Got a John Cassaday signature right there. But this is kind of where Marvel coerced Joss Whedon to come back or come in. Actually, yeah, it was a comeback into comics because he did a little bit of Buffy here and there before the big Buffy season 8 run. And then probably his other biggest run before this was Frey, the futuristic sequel to Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which that's a lot of fun as well. I highly recommend that if you're a Buffy fan and haven't checked that out. But this is kind of the first time we saw him on a big DC or Marvel title, which obviously we never saw him at DC, but like just to get a chance to see him on X-Men, this is as close to like, you know, a comic book adaptation into a movie. Not to mention the fact that John Cassaday's art is probably the best work he would ever do in this, in my opinion. Great 25-ish issue run, and I say that because I think it's 24 issues and in that giant size. But yeah, I love this book. This is one of those books I have to have like every cover for in the collection. Very difficult to weed to one X-Men book. I thought about going for X-Men 25 with that like hollow foil card on there where Wolverine gets his adamantium ripped out. I kind of wanted to do the Jim Lee X-Men number 1, but that's probably technically Copper Age. I didn't feel like arguing about that. So I just picked Astonishing X-Men number 1 because it was either this or New X-Men. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. And then that's the, I think this is either the B or the C cover. Yeah, it's the C cover because it's got that number 3. But yeah, read this if you have it because, yeah, absolutely. We got Beyond the Blast Doors in the chat. What is going on, man? I'm assuming that's David from Beyond the Blast Doors. He's got to be having a great time right now. The Mandalorian has been on fire. I can't wait to see what they do next on that show. But 3 episodes in, and they've all been hits. But if you guys want to see some great coverage of that, definitely check out Beyond the Blast Doors Network. They have some great coverage of the Mandalorian over there. And then we got the Mastodon. What is going on, Donnie? He's in the chat tonight. Glad you can make it, Donnie. All right, we're going to keep going with the list. And like I said, not all these books are worth a lot. This one I probably found for $5. But this one, another dollar bin book. But if you see this in the dollar bin, I can't recommend this enough. Pick this book up if you see it. Green Lantern Rebirth number 1. So not only did I try to limit it to one Green Lantern book, I tried to limit it to one Jeff Johns book. And I think, yeah, I did that. There's only one writer I don't think I limited. I was going to tie him. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a little bit. You can probably already guess. But had to have Green Lantern Rebirth on the list. For me, this is like my favorite comic run ever. Just from the start of this all the way to New 52, Green Lantern issue 20, like Jeff Johns puts together like a masterpiece of a run, basically. And to start it off, like Green Lantern was not treated that well in the late 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s. And I know I'm a Kyle Rayner fan as well. I love me some Kyle Rayner. But Hal Jordan, oh my God, Hal Jordan was put through the ringer. He lost Coast City to Mongol in a tie-in that wasn't even his. He turned heel on the entire Green Lantern Corps and started killing people when the Guardians told him he couldn't use the Green Lantern powers to create a fake Coast City that he lost his mind living in. And then he went and killed Sinestro when the Corps brought him back just to fight Hal Jordan. And then he became Parallax in 0 Hour, where he had this goofy costume with pointy shoulder pads and so on and so forth. And then he eventually burns up in the sun, reigniting it, becoming the Spectre somehow in the process. So by the time Jeff Johns got his hands on Hal Jordan, wanted to make him Hal Jordan again, The character was a huge mess, and God bless him. Jeff Johns managed to take all this garbage and make gold out of it. And I will always respect Jeff Johns' writing ability just for the fact that he was able to craft this awesome run out of Green Lantern Rebirth going forward. It should really be a testament to his skills. And of course, this copy, Ethan Van Sciver, Jeff Johns' signatures on that. Had to get this one double signed. So yeah, like I said, I can't recommend Rebirth enough, especially if you kind of know the ringer that Hal Jordan was put through in the 90s and that stuff, like at the sacrifice of, it's cool we got Kyle Rayner, but yeah, it had to be really rough for those 90s Hal Jordan fans. Let's see what we got in the chat. Chris Barrett says, when Johns was in his prime, he was the gold standard. Absolutely. It was very tempting to put his Teen Titans #1 on this list as well. I really like that run, but at the end of the day, I think I respect this Green Lantern one more. And not only that, it went on a lot longer and it was planned out a lot more. It had bigger events tying into it. So had to vote Green Lantern over Teen Titans, even though I really, really like that Teen Titans run. And then Chris Barrett said, yeah, never forget Kilowog, man. He killed Kilowog. And then, yeah, that's probably like my one quip with this run. He just, Kilowog's back, because why not? Because why not? Why wouldn't you bring back Kilowog? But anyway, we'll keep going. And I think this one definitely deserves to be on a top 10 list. And, based on the hoodie and the posters behind me, you knew this one was coming. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1 from the IDW run. This book, if you don't own it, you might want to grab it as soon as possible, because these things, by things I mean all Ninja Turtle books, are just going nuclear right now for whatever reason. You could say, I don't know, but there's tons of reasons. But I think one of the biggest reasons is this book right here. If it wasn't for the quality and the craftsmanship, the awesome writing they put into this 100+ issue run of the current TMNT run, I don't think the Turtle books would be seeing like this rise in popularity. Of course, this book behind me back here, Last Ronin, I don't know why that's still sitting back there, but it is. Of course, this has a lot to do with it as well. It's a cool premise and a cool story. It's got Peter Laird's name on it for the first time in years. That has a lot to do with Turtles exploding right now, but they wouldn't have got to make Last Ronin if they didn't make this first, in my opinion. So I think a lot of people are going to realize one day the value in this book. And I think it's already starting to peak up there a little bit. It's not a 3-figure book, but you never know. One day, I mean, 4th and 5th printings of the first run are triple figures. The Animated Adventures miniseries issue 1 is a triple figure book now. So why not this one eventually? But I'm not talking money on this one. The quality of the story in here is very good. I've covered it several times on this channel, so I won't go too much further into it. But if you're watching my channel and you don't believe me on my recommendation, go watch every other one of my videos. And yeah, definitely put this on your list if you can find it for sure. All right, we got 4 books to go here, and I need to get into the chat because I want to say hi to Count Von Strange IV. What is going on, Count? Nice to see him in the chat as well tonight. And Chris Barrett says, Donnie, that's not the worst thing Hal Jordan's ever done. I missed part of the conversation here. Don't know if I can forgive him for that. Oh, yeah, the Kilowog. Yeah, he killed Kilowog. Come on. Anyway, we're going into number 4. We're going to switch those two around. But number 4, Saga #1. This story is really good. What can I say about Saga that hasn't been said already? Comic Man Andy was in here earlier. Go to his channel. He'll tell you about Saga in every one of his videos. But I absolutely love this book. It took me a few reads to get into, but this run is going to be something special. It's going to be something talked about for years to come. Hopefully they finish it one day, but this is just one of those awesome, almost gateway reads that, if you're not a comic fan and you go to the shop for the first time, you can grab that Saga trade and you can be hooked right into it. So I had to put Saga on the list just because I absolutely love this book. And like I said, I thought about making one a tie earlier. I tried to limit putting writers on here multiple times and same characters. But this one still ended up at number 3. So I thought about making these two tied at 3, but I was like, screw it. I'll give them each their own spot. So Number 3, Y the Last Man. My favorite post-2000 read. Making a TV show. Actually, wasn't that TV show supposed to be on by now? But anyway, they're still in development somehow on this TV show. But I would just ignore all the TV show hype. Just go buy a hardcover or trade and go at least read the first volume. This issue in particular, not even the first volume, this is such a good hook into any comic series. Like, if anyone who's like creating a comic out there, I would highly recommend to them reading Y the Last Man #1. And this is how you hook in your readers, is Y the Last Man #1. Maybe the best first issue ever, maybe. I don't know. But at least for what my money's worth, I would say this is definitely belongs at the top for sure. Number 2, Ultimate Spider-Man #1. Got me the white cover on it. This is kind of like going back to Flash 92. This is one I wanted since the year 2000. I found a cheap copy a couple years ago. I think I only paid like $3 and a lot for this, basically. But obviously, the Ultimate books have lost all of the momentum in the world. But in the year 2000, 2001, so on and so forth, these books were hotter than the normal Marvel continuity books. So if you get a chance to read the entire 111 issue Brian Bendis, Mark Millar run, I highly recommend it. It's just a great way to hop into this character without having all the extra baggage of the 616 continuity. So I remember my first issue was actually issue 34, where they start introducing Ultimate Venom. But I knew once I read that, I had to go start with issue 1. So definitely respect this book for not only a great story, but it kind of kept Marvel afloat for a while on the comic side, because, like I said, the 616 titles, not too great. They eventually had John Michael Straczynski on the title. That was okay. But before that, Brian Bendis kind of saved the day with Spider-Man, and eventually gave us Miles Morales on top of it too. So had to put this high up on my list. And let me take a sip of water before #1. And then, Chris, you know me too well, buddy. I had to make Superman 75 my #1 book. Of course, I picked this cover purposely. I have the black bag cover on the wall over there. It's double signed, but this cover was the first comic I ever owned, period. I don't know where my 4th print newsstand is that was in my Christmas stocking. It's probably my brother's collection, but this will have to settle as a replacement, the 1st print newsstand, I guess. But yeah, if it wasn't for this book, none of this stuff would be behind me. Maybe the Turtles posters, but the comics, I probably would have never collected to begin with if it wasn't for this book. But yeah, had to put this at my personal #1. And I just think like the impact that this book had. I actually got a chance to get a couple signatures from Dan Jurgens a few years back at C2E2. And I was telling him this one got me into comics, and he's just like, I actually do hear that all the time. So I wonder, like, in the real world, how many people besides myself got into comics because of this one right here, and just the insane backlash it had, like with the explosion of like other variant covers and comic shops ordering like 1 million copies and holding half of them back to resell for double price, and speculators coming in. And essentially this being the death of death in comics, basically. So there's a lot going on here. So I really, really like this story too. The Doomsday Superman fight, it's just every panel is a splash panel in this. So definitely my favorite comic of all time for sure. So Superman 75, easy #1 on my list. So hopefully you guys can make sense of that list and you enjoyed it. Like I said, PS5 kind of ruined my thought process, but I think that's a pretty solid list. Tomorrow I'll wake up and want to have another 10 somethings on that list. So let me know what you guys think in the live chat and the comments below. I definitely would like to hear your guys' top 10 if possible. But also go check out, Not Near Mint from a couple Wednesdays ago. They had a pretty awesome list between their whole panel there. They each had 10 books between each of the panelists, and they picked their favorites. And I will say this, that I wanted to pick these because they're in my collection. Obviously, if I was ranking the most important modern books, Walking Dead probably would have been #1, but hey, this guy doesn't have Walking Dead #1, unfortunately. That's Walking Dead not being on the list. And Superman 75 being #1. So anyway, Chris Barrett says, Superman 75 probably got 500,000 people in the comic books. Yeah, who knows? Like, at least in the like Superman, because I don't remember too many people reading Superman before then. They had some good stuff post-Crisis, but there was a little bit of a lull period when I think Superman revealed his identity to Lois, and then 25 issues pass and we get here, basically. So, but like I said, this is my first issue, so I don't know. All right, but the PlayStation 5's calling my name, guys. Big shout out to the guys joining me in the chat. But thank you guys so much for joining me. I got to find a bumper here. Here we go. Have a good night, guys.